Dane, you can take over.
Sure. Look, I want to get a bit of an understanding of everyone's experience or exposure to psychology or sports psychology. None? Some with hands up for some? Yep. What do we know about it? There's no wrong answers, funnily enough.
For us, it didn't work because our daughter was too young.
Yep, okay. Yep.
So she couldn't process what they were saying.
Sure, absolutely. Someone else over there I think was going to...
There's a time planning factor, yet the same thing, age factor.
Yep, right.
Interesting.
Little short messages, positive messages, not yet.
Yep. Okay, they can do. Okay.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, I've been with a team where they brought a sports psychologist in once we went on tour, and none of the athletes had been exposed to that beforehand, and were expected to absorb everything and do it in that short couple of days before competition started.
Right.
And it was the biggest failure out.
Yeah, right. That would make sense. That it wouldn't work if it's such a short time frame in an intense environment. Yep.
Sports psychology, sometimes depending on personality types, the type of psychology that might be required might differ.
Personality is important. Yeah, absolutely right. Yep. Had a couple of experiences down here. Can I just ask what was your experience?
I was actually an athlete myself, and just knowing, like, just dealing with sports psychologists, I had a lot of trouble sleeping the night before a major race, and I had a lot of time spent with sports psychologists just to try to get just relaxation and just different techniques to try to just get some sleep that night before. But as I think Kyle said, leading up is very important. Say 3 or 4 days out, just didn't really matter what sort of sleep you got the night before. As long as you got your sleep the night before, and before, that's how we sort of approach.
Okay, so some relaxation there for sleep can be really, really important. I'm going to put down a few things, and this is probably what your knowledge, well, let me know if it's not, but this might be some of the experiences that you might have heard on the TV, through magazines and whatnot. Okay, I'm going to put, that's a positive self-talk.
Do we have any other techniques that we...
I just use it as usual acronyms like fear, like false expectations, fear is real.
Yep, right.
Psychologically, that's what fear is, but not really real, it's what you're making up.
Yep.
I also have a little thing that I use where I turn ants into pets, which means auto-negative thought patterns into positive enhancing thought patterns.
Sure, yep.
So little group rhymes, those kinds of acronyms, that kind of stuff to help you remember.
Mnemonics, absolutely. Acronyms, yep. Anyone else? Any other techniques come to mind?
Breathing.
Breathing, yep. Breathing for relaxation, I presume? Yep.
Yeah.
Breathing, yeah.
Deep, long
Okay, I'm going to put relaxation.
meditation.
Yeah, yep. Anyone else? Okay.
I forgot, I'm missing something. That's okay. That's fine. Some of you might be into NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, you might have heard of and whatnot. There's other techniques that are supposedly meant to give you the world. And what about you guys? What do you do for your athletes, for your children, rather, I should say? What do you try and do when they're struggling with? Reassure them?
Stay awake to get their head bitten off.
Sorry?
Stay awake to get your head bitten off.
Stay away, yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just try to concentrate just on the next thing, like just think about warming up and think about just the little parts rather than sort of the...
Great. Yeah, refocus, task-focused attention. Great.
Turning their negatives into positives.
Turning negatives into positives. Right. Anything else?
Ask them how they feel.
You can ask them how they're feeling. That's great. That can be a good technique to raise awareness in the moment of what's going on. Yes? It's not everything? Yeah, perspective. So, yeah, sort of bit of self-talk in that way, just changing their perceptions. Yep. Yep. Okay.
Sometimes just stay away and let the coach do it.
Yeah, let the coach deal with it. That can be useful.
Stay away times 2 seems to be a common theme, right?
Timing.
Let the athlete hurt or feel for the time that they need to gain that positive power back.
That's interesting. So you're actually talking about processing an emotion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Very, very important.
incredibly important. And I wonder what's actually going on. Well, I'm just going to pause up there because that's a really, really important point. Actually, emotional processing. Now, these techniques, and I apologise for my writing, actually, what are they trying to do? What are we trying to do here? If we promote this, right, if we promote positive self-talk, imagery, thinking of more pleasant things, trying to change someone's emotional state, all of this is in the aim of doing this. From a sports psych perspective, excuse me while I use this piece of paper to... We try to get the athlete into what you might have known as this area here, the zone or flow.
The ideal performance state.
The ideal performance state. Okay, so if our athlete's experiencing a level of anxiety that we don't like, try and move them into there. Or if they're too tired, we try and move them into there. We try and talk them out of certain ways of thinking. Now, they're all really good intentions. They're also a well-intentioned mistake. Okay? They're a mistake. And the reason is for a couple of, well, there are many reasons why. Firstly, I can talk about the scientific evidence to suggest, is it actually possible to get people in there? And evidence suggests it's not. Right? 30 years of evidence have said, well, it's no better than chance whether we get athletes into that state. We're dealing with humans who have amygdalas, limbic systems, if anyone here knows anything about the mind. Under stress and pressure, it is almost impossible to control these emotional experiences and your thoughts in the moment under stress and pressure. So if an athlete needs to get into here, or we tell athletes that we need to get to here, but the reality is they're somewhere. I'll get another pen here. They are somewhere on this line, because that's the reality. This is, pens don't work.
Let me just highlight this for you guys.
Okay, the pens aren't working, so it's against us. But the reality is, we like to think of performance on a straight line. Okay? We're just going to get better and better and better. That's what we like to think. Some people shake their head, we know it's not sometimes. But that's what we want, we like as humans. The reality is it's all over the place. So, if you're a child athlete, yourselves are here, but you think and believe you need to be in here, where does your focus and attention go? It could go back to the basics, yeah. But remember, if we are in this state over here,
Realistic goals.
to realistic goals,
No, you have to just try using all your energy to try and get into there rather than thinking about maybe what
Perfect.
correct.
You spend a lot of time and energy rather than focusing on, and I presume most of you, all of you attended the first presentation, what is performance about? Behaviours. It's actually not about feeling good. If we're purely focusing on performance right here today, we focus on trying to feel good by trying to get into a relaxed state, which is up here, by trying to feel confident. So we start to mistrust our own competence as a consequence. We don't believe it to be true. So we're inadvertently reinforcing the need to feel good in an environment where it's impossible to feel good all the time. How do we know as athletes, and actually in life anyway, that we're doing well in business, in relationships, in whatever? Actually, we're probably going to be in situations where there is stress and pressure, and we understand that rationally. Yet when we're there, we typically don't want to experience it. And that's what takes our task, or our attention away from our task and what should be classed as true focus.
Let's do this as a bit of an exercise. So I'm just going to pick yourself. You can just come up. Just down there. Just grab that. Okay, I want you to imagine that I am an emotion or a thought that you typically, or that someone might struggle with. So you're an athlete and you're experiencing a high level of anxiety, that's what your experience is, or you're having thoughts of self-doubt. Right, here I am, I pop up. Okay, that's me. Right, in between you and I is a big black hole. Right, where do you want to put me? Into, yeah, put me into the hole. Okay, bearing in mind over here is everything you need to focus on, what's really important. So all the people in the audience here, everything that's really, really important to focus on. You try and pull me. I might go away sometimes. You might win the battle, okay? And I might drop into the hole. However, next time, I occur again, right? And we're going to pull. This time I'm not going away. I want you to see how much energy and effort you're pulling, and it actually hurts my hand, right? Okay? Okay.
I'm ready now.
Right, okay, do you want me to really pull? I'm going to pull harder. No, okay. Look, this is the reality. Look at the struggle, right, that this causes, where your focus and your attention needs to be over there. Yet, through trying to think your way out of it, trying to breathe your way out of it, right, this is what you're doing. You're actually pulling.
I just wanted to say, did you notice how quickly it became, rather than being a little bit, just having a bit of a tug-of-war, how quickly, sorry, your name? Ariane, how quickly Ariane wanted to actually win the battle. It just happened instantaneously, and this is what happens internally as well. Right, and without going too much into the science of it, the mind evolved to problem-solve things. Evolved to problem-solve things in the physical world, right? And it's all about survival. We now try and problem-solve internal experiences. We don't like to feel like crap, right? Yet we know one of the many things we're going to feel like during our lives is crap on some days, on some moments. Yet every time we're experiencing that, we don't want to be in that situation. Hence the problem-solving nature of the mind. How do I remove that experience, which is that tug-of-war, right? Yet you're telling me, I understand though, in competition, that there is going to be pressure and stress and uncomfortable experiences, right? But when my child is in that situation, I don't want them to experience that stress and pressure. Inadvertently, what we do is we're reinforcing the need to have that struggle, which takes their focus away from doing what's relevant, which is executing behaviours. To a degree, these are well-intentioned mistakes which set up performance inconsistency. It's the human nature to want to feel good in the here and now. Absolutely. But it's not possible to do it all the time.
So when an athlete is feeling, stay here for a moment, is feeling anxiety, is experiencing it, or having those self-doubts, or even what we might traditionally class as negative thinking or a negative emotion, we like to try and teach the skill to try and become more positive or think your way out of it. But actually, the psychological process is that struggle and even avoidance sometimes. Okay, which you really don't want to get into, which is avoidance, but it's a lot of struggle. So, what's the solution? Well, what's the solution here, do you think, Ariane?
Allow it to be.
And how would you allow it to be?
Well, just accept and stay in the moment, in the present moment, and feel whatever you're feeling.
That's a beautiful, beautiful answer. What would that look like here? Okay. Well, you're still holding on. In you go. So what's the answer?
So
Here?
it would look at peace.
So what would you do?
You would just
Right. Well done. Okay. So that. Letting go of the rope. This signifies the struggle and control mechanisms that we, as humans, typically try and use. What Ariane correctly said was actually acceptance. Right. Emotional acceptance and a willingness to experience discomfort. Right? A willingness to experience discomfort in the service of focusing on what's important. Which comes back to, what was your name again, sir? Fiona. She said, actually emotional processing, really, really important, right? And that's processing the emotion is actually being able to sit with it. Being able to willingly sit with it. Great, there's a great comment, which is good athletes. You want to You can say this one. Good athletes perform well when they're feeling and they're thinking positively. Great athletes perform well regardless of what they're feeling. Right. And to drop that rope is a really, really important part of athlete development. Otherwise, you do promote inconsistency in performance from a psychological perspective.
And I might even just touch a bit on, we're talking about internal processes of your child athlete and their struggle with emotions. Let's focus on why you choose to try and remove their emotions. I like to use the analogy, anyone here got a pet dog? I've got one, right? Do you remember the first night you brought it into the house and it probably cried and whined, right? In the laundry, perhaps, for some of you. And you're laying in bed and you're thinking, no, not really enjoying this experience. So what do? You go in, you pick up the dog to console it, right? Actually, what you're doing is reducing your own distress at its distress. It's actually not about the dog. Now, certainly not calling your children dogs, but it's the same process. The reason you try and remove their distress is because it causes you distress, naturally. But we fall back to the same trap of reinforcing the need to feel good all the time. And that is problematic, particularly in sport and performance. Does that make sense to people?
Right.
The difficult thing, though, is doing it in the moment, when you're experiencing your stuff. And your mind's triggering, firing off a whole range of thoughts of, my poor darling, so on and so forth. And it's a hard thing to nip in the bud. It really is. But what we're trying to do today is promote discussion and promote your awareness to actually what's driving their performance and how you reinforce for the better their performance.
So earlier today, it was been about 35 minutes ago, I'd imagine. I think the question was posed in this room, how many people experience anxiety? Right? And I think every single athlete put their hands up, is that right? I wasn't actually...
I think there was an acknowledgement. This was from Kyle, Vanderkite.
Everybody, there was acknowledgement that pretty much everyone has done. So every single person experiences anxiety. Well, it's not really a surprise. We all have amygdalas, we're all humans. The absence of anxiety, anger, fear would actually more signify psychopathy than being human. So it's pretty normal to have these emotions. Yet when we have them, we struggle with them, even though they're the most normal thing in the world, because everybody has them. And I do mean everybody. Whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's Sally Pearson, everybody would have this ability to experience this. Yet what we do is we try and struggle with them. And that leads into the secondary issues. So, why? Dane touched on the problem-solving nature of the mind. So hopefully I can give a bit of an example of what happens. Let's split this group into two. You guys and you guys. Okay, so it's two groups, and I want you to imagine you're two tribes. You over here, congratulations, you have the ability to talk to each other. You have language. Unfortunately, you guys don't. Right? So language group, no language group. Now, let's say the first 4 rows of each group. Imagine you went off hunting. Okay? Hunting and gathering for food one day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Then over the hill, half of you again, so the first 2 rows, went over the hill to look for food. Now, you guys never came back. What the other half of the group that went hunting heard were all these sounds of grunting and growling and who knows what, okay? No one came back. Right. What did your group, when you returned to the rest of your tribe, say, do you think, to the rest of your group? Don't climb over the hill. Why not? Yeah, why not? Danger. It's dangerous, it's animals. Yep. Okay. You may actually even... Why didn't you help? trying to work out, we're already trying to problem solve what's happening, okay? So with language, we're problem solving what's happening. Okay, really important. Over here, what do you guys say? Correct. So, who's more likely to go over the hill next time? You are. Okay, so who's more likely to survive? It's the language group, okay? Right. So because of language, we have this ability to problem solve and judge. Because over the hill is danger. And danger is bad. Right? So congratulations, you guys, because you've had language, you can problem solve and judge and evaluate. You worked out not to go over there because that is bad. Great. The ability to problem solve is awesome. It's what makes us be able to be great at building houses and working out new projects. And it's awful when it comes to our own emotions and our own thoughts. Right? It's not very good at actually problem solving our way out of our emotions and our thoughts. So that's why we struggle. That's why we want to pull on that rope. That's one of the main reasons anyway. Then there's the social aspects of it. Right? So to understand that is really, really important. Because once you understand the normality of it, you can actually use your experiences of when you struggled with things to show how normal it is with your children.
I just want to use an example of the problem-solving nature of the mind. Sunday today, so we might go down this path. Anyone here have wine or beer last night, or a drink, coffee, whatever it may be? All right, a few of you, excellent. It might be a Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, it might be a red, a Merlot, it might be a beer of, I don't know, James Bogues, whatever. I just want you to imagine your drink of your choice right now. Actually, I'll make it really concrete. I want you to imagine a latte. I want you to imagine a latte in a glass, little foam on top, okay? I want you not to think about that latte for the next 20 seconds. Don't think about it. Right, how's that working out for you? Right, okay, now lattes are pretty good things, right? We actually have a positive reference to a latte, typically speaking. Some people mightn't like coffee, I understand. But for illustrative purposes, we normally think, judging-wise, it's a good thing. Yet you struggle not to think about it. Okay, right. You may see where this is going because of your problem-solving nature of the mind. If you think about anxiety and thoughts surrounding that, and the techniques that we use typically of trying to forget about it, trying to distract ourselves by talking to other competitors, trying to imagine your happy place as examples, how are you not meant to think about anxiety if you can't actually not think about thoughts? So the more you don't want to have it, the more you've got it, if that makes sense. And the bigger the struggle is. Your attention... Your attention. All right, and this is what the mind does. The mind wanders onto other interesting things. It's hard to remain focused on task. It is. That's the human nature. The more you don't want an experience internally, which you actually can't get rid of, long term, the more you struggle with it and the more your attention and focus is on problem solving that issue. Now, if we get the rope again, where are we? Here we go. Quickly with Dan and me. Dan's still that negative thought, the negative feeling, whatever's showing up on race day, hypothetically. Okay? If he's the thought, and we've just learnt that we can let go of the rope, what is letting go of the rope? We spoke about acceptance, but what is it actually? Awareness is the first stage.
Yeah, observe and then let it go.
If we
Acknowledge it.
Yep, acknowledge it.
Nerves rejecting.
The rope is probably symbolic of your relationship to the thought and the feeling. If you don't want to have it, you're going to fight it internally. If you use a notion of acceptance of going, well, you know what, I'm in a competitive environment, I'm going to feel these things, and that's normal, You learn to drop the rope. So the issue isn't the negative thought or the negative feeling. It's your own personal relationship to it. Does that make sense? And it's a really tricky thing to experience because you've had your lifetime of being educated and socialised to quick fixes, such as if you feel like, don't feel good, go on a holiday, go on a shopping spree, sleep, all these, alcohol, whatever it may be. We do that stuff to feel good. In the short term, it often works, right? But what it also means, conversely, is that you are not willing to experience internal discomfort, which we keep saying is a natural part of A, life, and B, training, competition, the competitive environment. So we inadvertently set ourselves and our kids up for failure in that respect.
Yeah. We don't want, I don't want you to get this wrong, it's a really important difference between willingness and want. I don't want athletes to experience, or anyone I work with, I don't want athletes to experience discomfort. It's not comfortable, it's not nice, it's not pleasant. The question is, are you willing to in service of performance? There's a big, big difference, okay? Big difference between want and willingness. Willingness is that acceptance of, okay, this is how it is, right? I'm not going to choose to put my effort and focus and my attention and my struggle over here. I'm going to choose to focus on what's important. We don't want athletes to experience that. We're not sadists. There's a big difference. What it does, the idea of acceptance and willingness comes back to the sort of why we looked into the clinical side of things back at uni. The most effective psychological therapy there's ever been, in terms of the effect on a human, is exposure therapy. Right? Whether it's fear of spiders, well, the only way to get rid of it is not to think your way out of it, it's to expose yourself to spiders gradually, and you increase your acceptance, the process underneath it. Right? That's why emotional processing is important, because you're exposing yourself to discomfort, and in time it actually eases. But if you struggle and fight, it will not. Another metaphor for you guys. Imagine you have a mosquito bite, and it itches, and you're unwilling for it to itch. What do? You scratch it. Okay. The more you scratch it, the more you fight against it, what happens? It itches more, it becomes bigger, it gets infected. But you just allow it to be there. In time, it goes away quicker. That's exposure therapy in a metaphor, and that's willingness in a metaphor. Okay? So to teach your kids acceptance and willingness is really, really important. And that's to actually share your experiences of your struggles with them, to normalise it. Because they see you as up here. They do. You might not think it, but they see you as the Dalai Lama's yourself, yeah.
Yeah, I just had a question though with that. There's obviously different levels of stress in the
Correct.
kids. There's a bit of nerves and then there's total panic attack, freak out.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where our dog is at.
Mm-hmm.
How can you try and get them to accept that when there's no logic whatsoever left, they're just in full panic mode?
Mm.
How can you then say to them, just accept it?
Well, you can't say that.
No, so
That wouldn't work. The important thing would be to really start first on the normalisation of it, because just like a mosquito bite, it gets worse after time as you continue to fight and scratch it, right? So there are the mechanisms in place you can do as a psychologist to reduce the effect of the panic attack after the panic. So basically increase the sort of your self-esteem after you have it, really normalise it, and then you actually teach the ability to sit with it over time, and then it will subside. But it's through compassionate use of exposure therapy is always the best way.
It's like the clouds.
We can chat one-on-one.
Over the sun, the clouds come and go, so do our emotions, they pass.
Correct.
And it's the same with your daughter's panic attacks. Like it's an emotion and it's now going to build up. So it will pass. And if they understand
with these things, no, it's okay. With these things, they take time. They do take time. You're going from a situation, metaphor number 1 million, where two countries used to be at war, England and France. Right, just to give this example, they had a 100-year war. Okay, they were fighting each other. Now, over time, 100 years of war. Now, their relationship is one of allies, not enemies. Right? It's a different relationship. And you can build that in yourselves and your child athlete as well. Okay, that can change.
Just wanted to, we spoke a little bit about normalisation, normalising the experience. One of the best, we do a bit of work with Ski Snowboard Australia as well. One of the best things that certainly I heard, don't know about Dan, that a coach ever said to an athlete prior to a race, right? This athlete had a tendency to vomit, right? So really strong symptomology, okay, as a response to anxiety. The coach is like, 5 minutes ago, time to have a vomit, right? Normalise the process so it wasn't a problem. Dropping the rope, so to speak. And over time, the strength of that urge to vomit reduced. And that person was able to focus on, again, what was relevant. She wasn't getting caught up in that struggle anymore of trying to rid herself of the experience because she wasn't seeing it as being so problematic to have.
Yeah.
What do you suggest when a child is too nervous to eat and they've got a very big day of competition? I thought we might be addressing some things like that. Like my son gets so nervous he can't eat anything, and you know they've got a whole day where they've got to have some fuel in the system.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's difficult to, you can't force feeding someone, but it's essentially, again, it's okay that you're not feeling like you want to eat. Are you willing to eat in service of performance? I mean, that's a very, very basic way of what I'm answering, but it's, you don't feel like you want to eat, yet we know that physiologically it would benefit you, and you haven't eaten since dinner last night or whatever it may be, so you know that your stomach's empty. You're just having the feeling that you don't want to eat. And it's feeling sick. When you feel anxious, you don't want to eat because the anxious experience induces the feeling of vomiting. And going back to if you vomited, it might deter prey. I had a bush turkey on my bed when I lived in Queensland, and it pooed itself because it was so anxious, and that's how it deters prey. So when you might have athletes that have diarrhea prior, it's a symptom of anxiety. Vomiting is a symptom of anxiety, just like sweating and whatnot. And it's become disordered over time, struggle with it. Okay? So, in short, you would teach that it's just a feeling, but you'd have to explore it a bit more. But there's no quick fix to that. I wouldn't suggest. I certainly wouldn't have a quick fix. But to teach that it's just the feeling that he has, and just start with a little bit of food and then gradually increase it.
Look, what we've tried to do today is raise your own awareness to actually the processes that are driving performance and actually how you guys can help reinforce things for the better. Just from that question at the back there, I get the sense that perhaps this presentation you thought might have addressed some other things. So I want to throw it out to the floor. Are there any questions that you would like to ask from our perspective or like answered?
Not really a question, but I'd just like to throw something out there that what you're saying is actually really positive in the fact that it's all about just acknowledging what's going on and what you're feeling, and what you're actually creating is resilience. So ultimately, long term, we all have our everyday experiences. It's not just about what our children are experiencing.
Right.
It's about what we're feeling as parents in their everyday life. But every time they're experiencing these things, it's actually a positive thing because they're learning from this and they're acknowledging what those feelings and emotions and butterflies and whatever else is. So when these feelings begin to come more frequently or less frequently later on, it's because they've actually accepted and acknowledged what's going on and they've become more resilient to that. And I think that the question over there is something I could actually help you with because it's creating a behaviour to that child
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we can use resilience, we can talk, sexy terms such as mental toughness. What this fundamentally comes down to is about a person's tolerance to discomfort. So getting them to become more comfortable with uncomfortability internally. And then actually what happens is those same thoughts, the exact same thoughts and the exact same images and the exact same feelings aren't as amplified. That makes sense. We start to, again, use that metaphor, drop the rope. We become more comfortable with being uncomfortable, so therefore it's not a problem. And then that reduces that physical symptomology.
Is there a point that you have to actually take those steps very carefully at the start with that? Because you could actually turn it quite around the other direction. I'll give an example. We had a young fellow that was with football, to change the whole subject, and he used to come in all the time, just he's starting to get a little bit tense in the hammies and want to rock down because that's good. And we tried to say, mate, you need to stay out there in the field, do a few more stretches. But he got to the point when they actually said no more. He went downhill because they just just like letting the wind out of the balloon. So you need to have strategies in doing this all nice and slow.
Yeah. And sometimes flooding is what essentially you did. It sounds like it. It can work sometimes. But you want to do a graded exposure. That's what the evidence suggests you do. You do a graded exposure and you do it compassionately. To do that can be traumatic. There are some organisations out there that work on a similar philosophy to us, not exactly the same, but actually athletes present with trauma afterwards. You don't do that. Exactly, you don't necessarily flood, you do a graded exposure. If they're at a particular state in their development or their experience, their emotional experience, you want to, first of all, work out where they are at and then, build up the ladder. Absolutely right. But always with the aim of the increasing willingness and acceptance.
So I think, one of our, main take-home points is as parents, we're putting our, and hopefully kids are also choosing to put themselves in positions where they're going to potentially experience stress and discomfort, have anxiety, have frustrations, have sadness, and hopefully happiness as well, right? But if we know it to be true that that's the case, that they're going to experience negative internal experiences as a consequence of what they're choosing to do, then every time we explicitly or implicitly reinforce that they shouldn't feel that way, you actually make the struggle worse. And purely from a performance perspective, that removes focus away from executing behaviours, but also from a welfare perspective, it can well-intentionally amplify their distressed experiences.
I think another important point about that also is the environment of when that's actually occurring. Because, these are kids that are out in an arena, they're surrounded by other competitors, and that they're not wanting other people to see what's going on with them. Yet deep down inside, they're probably craving for their parent to be right there and help them in some way or another, or their coach.
Right.
Oh, definitely.
The environment is something that, awareness may happen sometimes.
100%, you're absolutely right. I mean, with regards to whether they crave parents or coaches, that might be the case, it might not. But yeah, athletes are conditioned to experience all different types of distress, whether it's out in the athletics arena, swimming, tennis, golf, AFL. They're conditioned. It's almost a conditioning response, being in the environment. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
One thing that can help you normalise is put yourself in the same situation and you compete yourself. And you go through similar sort of anxieties that children will go through.
Yeah, absolutely right. To share an experience, either put yourself in their shoes, so that's essentially the fundamental basis of empathy, but to put yourself in their shoes, to share an experience where you've struggled is the most powerful tool, if you like, to use as parents. It is such a powerful tool to normalise that experience.
And the reason we educate in this way and we teach this philosophy, the evidence suggests that this works, but you've got to remember, as Dan said, you guys are your kids' Dalai Lamas or demigods or whatever that may be. If you teach them, again, it's not acceptable or appropriate to feel a particular way, they're going to spend their time trying to conceal it from you. They've learned that it's inappropriate. It's not okay to feel that. And again, that makes that struggle worse. This is why we go down this empathic path and normalise it. That, you know what, darling, sweetheart, Bob, Jane, okay, right?
JT,
You know, it's, you know, I understand that you're feeling this, and that's really normal. And you know what, it does suck to be feeling like that. However, these feelings will pass and so on and so forth. And you know, you might want to share, well, you know what, when I competed, or, you know, when I give presentations, I still feel anxiety. Yes, I do. That's pretty normal. And actually, a little bit back more to science. I'll just leave it at this. The mind evolved to problem solve with things in the physical world. We don't have to worry so much about survival in Western society. We are damn sure worried about judgments from other people. We get caught up in our past experiences and we think about the future a lot. And if you're competing and you're getting caught up in those two areas, you're not in the here and now. You're not focusing on what's actually relevant. So these are skills which you can learn. We can teach, we can educate. A bit of the sales pitch, we're actually located in the room next door. So you're more than welcome to come and have a chat to us, make contact. We've got details up there as well.
And there's a couple of pamphlets, the cards at the back.
But hopefully you've found this informative today. And hopefully this will promote also a little bit of discussion as well. We're coming from a very different paradigm of actually what works long term for performance consistency and how you as parents can actually develop that rather than inadvertently promoting performance inconsistency. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.